Hi everyone, I'm Megan and I'm here with my February wrap-up. I read a lot of books for class this month and only one book for funsies. Let's get started. So the first book I read was Rin Tin Tin by Susan Orlean. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This is about the legend and the actual dog Rin Tin Tin. So he was a silent film star, the dog, yeah, in the 1920s. And then there was a TV show in the 50s, and it just follows like why so many people still know and love Rin Tin Tin. Next, I read The Kiss by Kathryn Harrison. I gave this also 4 stars. This is about Kathryn Harrison's, it's a memoir, I might have said that. This is about Kathryn Harrison's relationship with her mother and her father. She has an affair with her father. He was estranged from her for most of her young life, and then in her 20s when they meet, he's very charismatic and persuasive and things go down, and it's kind of an exploration of a love triangle between her and her mother and her father, and it's really interesting and a bit uncomfortable and creepy, but I found it really fascinating. Next, I read Running in the Family by Michael Ondaatje. I gave this 3 stars. It is about Michael's family and his family history in Sri Lanka. It's interesting, however, it's nonfiction, but the structure was a little confusing and I had a hard time like caring or getting into it. He describes the island and the beauty of it and the history of it, and he goes into his own family history. It was a bit hard to follow. I found it interesting in the end, and there were some good things. I really like his writing. I read one of his novels and it was lovely. And finally, for my creative nonfiction class, I read Bluets by Maggie Nelson. This I would give it 3 stars, and this is about Maggie Nelson's obsession with the color blue. Also kind of about one of her past relationships, but mostly about blue. I think some of the ideas she has in here about blue and about pain and about love are really interesting, but it's also a bit confusing and hard to follow. So I'm not sure how I felt about it. I think I liked it. Let's move on to poetry. So for my poetry class, I read Bright Dead Things by Limon. I really liked her poems. I'd give it 4 stars. She writes very lovely. She has really good images, and her exploration of death and beauty and love and sexuality and like our oneness with the world is really interesting. So I really enjoyed her poems. Next, I read the Niagara River by Kay Ryan. Her poems are very short. I would give this 3 stars. So her poems are very short, but they're also repetitive because they're very similar in their shortness. I liked it. She rhymes really well. She has good rhymes. I enjoyed that, but it was kind of like I had to read it for class, so I did. We read Winter Stars by Levis. I'd give this 2 stars. I didn't really care for his poems. They were very long, and they didn't have rhyme schemes, and they didn't have like really central images that I could hold on to. I will say, like, the 2 or 3 poems that I read aloud just to like keep my mind engaged because I was just drifting reading them silently, the 2 or 3 I read aloud I enjoyed. I liked those ones. So maybe it's just their poems you need to read aloud. I don't know. And finally, for my contemporary prose class, we read the best books. Like, my professor has flawless taste. So I read The Buddha in the Attic by Otsuka. I would give this 5 stars. It's so good. This is about Japanese picture brides, which, if you don't know, Japanese picture brides are women who in the like 1920s came to America, specifically California, in order to marry Japanese men who'd come here before. It's written in a plural voice, so everything is we, there is no I, and I could understand if that gets on your nerves a little bit, but it's just so beautifully written. It's practically poetry. It's really small, so there's not a lot of time for the narrative voice to get on your nerves, and I cried during the entire last chapter. It's so good. I can't even talk about it. We also read Station 11 for class by Emily St. John Mandel, and I will give this 5 stars as well because it's so good, and I'm not gonna cry in this video. I'm not gonna do it. I loved this book so much. I think I want to reread it actually. Station 11 is about a troupe, a traveling symphony in the post-apocalyptic world. So this flu virus wipes out like 90% of the population, and the traveling symphony is 20 years later. It kind of follows a central group of characters both before and after this flu epidemic that ends the world, basically. It's so hopeful and beautiful. It was compared by some people to The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I don't think it's anything like The Road, because The Road was very sad and dark and bleak and sad and so flippin' sad. This book is so full of hope and beauty and like life. I went to work and just like cried over electricity because I was so like, I was in the world of the book and just so moved, and I love this book, and I've already bought one of her other books, and I can't wait to like just follow this author wherever she goes. And then for class we also read The Book of Night Women by Marlon James, and I would give this 4 stars, maybe 4.5, probably 4. This is about a slave in Jamaica in the 1800s. Her name is Lilith. It starts when she's born and it ends after, so this isn't a spoiler, it's on the back. So it ends kind of after there's a slave revolt. The reason that I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 is because it was a bit difficult to get into. The character of Lilith, like, she has amazing character development. She really, like, Marlon James knows how to write characters that are dynamic and changing and real to life. But I want to say the first 100 pages were kind of difficult. But it is a 400-page book, so if you can make it through the first 100 pages, like, you can keep going. The other thing is that this is written in a dialect. He tried to get as close to the Jamaican slave dialect of the 1880s as he could. That's also another reason why it might be hard to get into, but once you're in it, like, you're in it to win it. It's really good. And finally, the book that I finished for fun, I've actually been reading since December. Yeah, it took me a long time to read this. And that is Black Widow Forever Read by Margaret Stohl. I would give this 3.5, probably 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, and I've seen other reviews for it, and I will be putting up a review for this, it wasn't what I expected, and it wasn't exactly what I wanted. I liked it, but I was disappointed in it. However, I will be reading the second book. I don't know when it's coming out, but there is a second book planned. So that was my February wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if you would be interested in reading them. Like, I highly recommend Station 11. Like, if you have not read that yet, it's flippin' beautiful. And I'll see you soon. Bye!